Welcome back, Trail Finders. In the previous session, we talked about the SOQL queries and how do we write them. Today, we are going to talk about relationship query. So if you remember the master detail and the lookup relationships, which we studied as part of the admin series, what you could do is you could connect two different objects in Salesforce and make a relationship between them using a lookup or a master detail relationship. Now, if you have such a relationship in your database, you have created a model like that. So then how do you write a query? Like in this case, let's take an example of account and contact. So account is the parent and contact are the child. Why? Because for one particular account, you can have multiple contacts. Your account object is your parent object and your child object is your contact object. Now, there are two ways of writing the relationship query. One is that you write it using the parent-child query, wherein you write the main query from the parent and then you go to the child, or you can write the master query on the child and then you can go to the parent. We'll see both of them in action now. So let's go to our favorite place, which is the developer console. Here we are. So I've already created the class and the method. So now what do we need to do is we need to write a query. So let's first write our parent to child query. So how do we write that? So parent is account. So obviously you'll get a list of accounts because you are writing a query. So you would get more than one account from your query. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a list of account and we are going to call it account list. Next step is we are going to put this square braces, and within this square braces we will write our query. So first step, whenever you write any SOQL query, you need to write select. Select is the way you start your query with. Then let's say I want to get the ID and from, and then I'll say the object from where I need to get the details from. So here we are getting select ID from account. So this is my parent object and this is my master query. Now I need to get the contacts as well. So how do I do that? So if I'm going to do parent to child query, then what I'm going to do is, like, after putting comma, I can add more fields here. Like I want to get the name of the account as well. Similarly, we'll put another comma, we'll open a parenthesis, and within this parenthesis, we'll write select again ID from contacts. If you know that the contact object is called contact, but here, because it is the child of the account, there would be multiple contacts. Hence, we are using contacts. This particular contacts is called the relationship field between the account and contact. If we go to the setup and if you go on the contact object, on the contact object, we have the field called account name. And if you go on to that, it says here, child relationship contacts. So you need to put this particular value in your query. So, if you're creating a custom relationship, then again, while creating, Salesforce would ask you what would be the child relationship name be, and then you need to put that particular name in your SOQL query. And once you do that, and let's say I want to get the first name from the contact. And then what we can do, we can write our for loop because the master is. So what we'll do is we'll write the for loop, which is account, and then we'll say which, we'll write the, obviously our for loop will run on the account object, and then we'll run the loop against the account list. Now, what you would see here is we can straight away do system.debug and we can say a.name. This would give us the account name, right? We can here, write it like that as well. So if it makes more clearer to you, think about it, because an account can have multiple contacts. That's what we are trying to say here. So how do we traverse through all of the contacts? So we do that using another loop here. And how do we do that? So our object here would be contact, and let's say contact C. And then what do we say here is it would run against what? It would run against a dot contacts. Why? Because contact is the relationship between account and the contact. And then what do we say here is we'll say system dot debug and we'll say first name C dot first name. And now if I save this and try to run this particular class, So if you see test account does not have any contacts, then we have Edge Communications, which have two contacts, Sean and Rose. Then for Burlington, we have Jack, Pyramid, we have Pat, and so on and so forth. Like United has four contacts. You see that, this way we are getting so many accounts and contacts coming up together. So this particular query is called parent to child query. Then up next is child to parent query. How do we write this? So as the name suggests, our master object here would be the child. So in our case, the master object is called contact. So what we'll do is we'll create a variable in the name of contact. So we'll say contact list. What we'll do is we'll create the square braces and we'll write the query. So we'll say select ID, comma, first name from contact. So far it should be clear because it's very basic. We are just writing the basic query, which is ID, which is the query on the contact object. We are just trying to fetch the ID and the first name from contact. Now, we want to get the account details as well. So how do we do that? So what you need to do is you need to get the name of the field. So this particular field on contact is called account. So what do we say here is account.name. And then you can go further down. So account.id. You can do things like this. And basically to traverse to the parent, you need to use that particular lookup or master detail relationship field name. And then you can traverse using dot and get the field names from the parent and put them together here. And now you would get all of the results here. The good part about this is if you write the for loop on this particular list, there's a good thing which is going to happen. It is going to make it simpler for you to run this loop. How? Because we can just say system.debug and we can say first name, which is c.first name. And then what we can also say is ACC name, and which could be here. So c.account, the same way we wrote earlier, we'll write it the same way, c.account.name. Right? Like you wrote in the query, you'll have to write it in the same fashion. Try and run it, and then I'll come back and show you the difference between these two. So if you see, this is the first one, and then we have the second one, which is coming up like this. So if you see United Oil and Gas, and it is now showing you all four together, like in separate rows, and you are seeing United coming up 4 times, and so on and so forth for each of the accounts where you have multiple contacts available. Now, there's a good thing about the child to parent is that the results that you get are in a flat format. So basically you just use one for loop and it runs, it gives you both the contact and the associated account. Whereas in this case, you need to use 2 for loops because one is on the account list and then other is on the contact list within that particular account. Both are equally fine and both are, required based on the kind of logic you are writing. Sometimes you would have to use parent to child query and sometimes you would have to use child to parent query. But in most of the scenarios and in simpler data models, child to parent query works in most of the scenarios, unless you are writing a very complex logic and you don't have the child object details with you already and you only have the parent details with you, then you need to go via parent to child query route. So it totally depends how you are coming to that particular logic from the parent or from the child, but you have both the options from where to find the child or the parent. I hope this video is helpful to you. If you have any questions on parent to child query or child to parent query, reach out to me and I'm happy to answer your questions.